Hi, my name is Susan Schneider. Along with Deanna Forbes, I co-curated the exhibition Wild in the City, Untamed, an art exhibit presented by the Vallejo Naval and Historical Museum September 9th through October 8th, 2016. This exhibit was in conjunction with the U.S. Forest Service's third annual Visions of the Wild Film and Art Festival, which took place in Vallejo, California, September 15 through 18, 2016. Wild in the City Untamed explores works that reveal in some way common aspects of nature's wild in the urban setting that are very often unwelcome, taken for granted, or seen as banal and yet are indomitable and ubiquitous. The more we considered the urban intersection with nature, the more we realized we were having trouble seeing a clear demarcation between the wild and the urban. The question soon became, how aren't we connected to the wild? Artists often rhapsodize at length about being inspired by the beauty and grandeur of how nature looks, often from a safe distance. In this exhibition, we wanted to bring smaller, more mundane, less appreciated, less obvious and intimate aspects of the wild and untamed in the city into focus. So we chose to exhibit traditional media, paintings, prints, drawings, collages, ceramics, and wood sculpture by the following artists, shown in this order: Betsy Kendall, the late Joe Odo, Deanna Forbes, Christina Branch, Lisa Eshrick, John Worley, Linda Benjes, myself, Mark Pandone, Tim Ray, and Brian Rothstein.
My name is Betsy Kendall. I'm an oil painter. I live in Berkeley, California. And I'm interested in places where wild things peek out from the urban environment. I started out trying to paint just wild places when I lived in the country directly, which is the most fun and for me the most beautiful. When I moved to Berkeley, I started to look around for wild places nearby. This is my favorite found place, El Cerrito Recycling Center in El Cerrito, California. It's at the base of an old quarry. You can see the rocks that were quarried, and it has grown up in eucalyptus and native pines. And the city of El Cerrito has taken it for its recycling center. This is where the road ends, at the recycling center and the sanitary sewer district. But as a place, it's full of light and color and motion. And I find I see this best when I paint on site, which is what I do. I go out there with my big old canvases and my messy paints, and I try to find the things that excite me. So the first time I painted there was, they were building the place, and so we had these terrific signs, road closed, slow ahead. And it became much more beautiful very soon, until we finally achieved this place where people come and park their cars and take hikes and visit the recycling center for their found books and junk that people like. And when I work that way, I find that you can see the movement, which has been frozen in paint that I have made with the brush.
The next three paintings are by the late Joseph Odo. He was a long-time Bay Area figurative artist who lived in the East Bay. This first painting is called 4 plus Coxswain, or Coxswain. It is one of several rowing paintings the artist completed in his lifetime. Joseph's widow Frances says about this painting: Joe came to the rowing paintings in the early 1980s when we had returned to Oakland from the East Coast. We rented an old house near East Oakland that was only a few blocks from Lake Merritt, which happens to be the oldest bird sanctuary in the United States. The lake is also home to the Lake Merritt Rowing Club, which Joe joined in order to learn to row and get out there on the water with the birds. Eventually, Joe was allowed to row a single scull, and for 30 years, he rowed every afternoon after cleaning up his painting gear. From this experience came the subject matter for rowing paintings from California to Augusta, Georgia. The rowing painting in this exhibition exemplifies something Joe said in an artist talk in 1995. Quote, "I try to get the feeling of the light by experimenting with color. Before painting, I do a lot of small studies, trying out various colors. That's why I do series, so I can play with color. And I'm still very interested in subject matter." This next painting by Joseph Otto is called Port of Oakland. Francis says, "This painting grew out of many small studies, which were painted directly at the site in Alameda, near the approach to the old Naval Air Station. In the early 1990s, anyone could park on the Alameda side next to the Port of Oakland with its liners, tugs, sailboats, and kayakers. Joe parked his old painting van there and, with a slab of wood cut to fit over the steering wheel for his easel, painted oil studies for several years prior to the completion of the large painting in 1996. This last painting by Joseph Otto is called Blue, or Looking West from the Berkeley Hills. It measures 55 by 61.5 inches. About this painting, Franz says that this also came out of a series of studies done over a period of years from the public parking area next to the Lawrence Hall of Science on the University of California campus. If Joe went up there early enough, he could get the parking place at the top end from which he could see directly down the steep hill and all the way to San Francisco. The seeming detail in the distance in this painting is not detail at all, but a visual representation of what you see when you look down the hill. It is made up of considered placement of strokes of color in an atmosphere of fog, which is not really white. And please note the blue shadows going down the hill in the near foreground. In the statement he made for an exhibition at Dominican University in 2009, Joe said, "A painting visually speaks for itself. What I can speak of is my own continued enthusiasm for painting after 50 years. Just as a love of literature comes from the books one has read, and a love of music from the music one has listened to, a love of painting comes from looking at them. Painting has a rich tradition that encompasses all cultures and goes back in time to prehistory. I hope the work presented here will spark the viewer's enthusiasm for painting and for seeing them with a painter's eye." This painting is by Deanna Forbes, the co-curator of this exhibit. She's a longtime Bay Area figurative painter who currently lives and works in Vallejo. The paintings she has entered into this show feature the element of fog in the city and its effect on our lives. This next painting by Deanna Forbes is entitled Wilson Avenue Evening, and it shows a view from a hillside in Vallejo featuring the Napa River in the background. And you can see she put a little boat in the middle of the water there. These next two paintings are by Christina Branch. Christina is a Stanford University professor emerita with degrees from Smith College and Queens College. She spends half the year in Maine and half here in California. Her residencies include Yaddo, McDowell Colony, Skowhegan, and Ossabaw. Painting views of cities led to her interest in construction sites, resulting in her series Men at Work, exhibited at Maine's Farnsworth Museum and the Cantor Center in California. Currently, she is writing a novel, a portrait of a small New England town after World War II. About painting, she says, finding the green of trees is what I enjoy most about painting in the city. The color becomes more intense by being set in relief against the grays of asphalt and concrete. And I love what the green represents, the single-minded exuberance of nature in the midst of sidewalks, streets, and freeways. Lisa Esherick is a longtime Bay Area painter who lives in Berkeley. Her paintings in this show focus on nature in urban garden settings, as well as the influence of the weather and time of day. Lisa says, I love the rambunctious unruliness of nature as it works its way around the rigid box-like regularity of structures. Trees and shrubs and all manner of growing things animate and enrich our environment with wondrous unpredictability. That is when nature is left to its own devices. On the other hand, in the formal garden that is clipped and pruned and shaped to man's desires, nature is restrained and controlled, given order, so the plants are made into boxes, not unlike growing buildings. Both approaches to dealing with nature fascinate me as subjects for paintings.
I'm John Worley. I have a studio in Richmond, California. I have a long-term interest in the relationship of nature to culture. The investigative nature of the creative process is something that intrigues me. I've been an artist since I was in the 4th grade in Waco, Texas. I am overeducated, unemployed, enjoy making stuff, and have been doing it for a number of years. I've actually made a living as an artist for a long time doing large-scale public murals. I have become very interested in the concept of tool-using animals, where tools, would normally the thing that we think of as separating human beings from other species. Crows, generally considered to be the most intelligent of birds, but they can also be quite brutal to other avian species. And in this particular work, I'm examining not only the logical consequences of crow intelligence, but also perhaps a certain disagreement between mockingbirds and crows. So I really am a painter, moonlighting as a sculptor, and the thing that I've always enjoyed about these works is that it sort of puts me back in touch with the painting. I'm more interested in verisimilitude, capturing the illusion, getting the details right of the portrait or the landscape. Whereas work like this frees me up and has more of a folk quality. It puts me more in touch with my naive 4th grade self. And this is another one of the studies for the works about crows that I was doing. And on my walks, I do a lot of observation. Just the other day, I saw a murder of crows, about 15, on the top of a high voltage line, and it sort of reaffirmed this drawing for me that I'd done years ago. And of course, you know, the thieving nature of the animal. Somebody's going to want those car keys back, you know. But there you have it. Watch out for the high voltage wires. So this piece is actually a little older than some of the more recent ones that I've done. It actually dates from a period when I was making a lot of wooden television sets, sort of with the idea of transferring ephemeral electrons into a more concrete medium. And again, that relationship between nature and culture, somewhere I found the pieces of an old abandoned TV and ended up constructing another analog model myself. And then it was just a slight leap to imagine, you know, a blue heron sort of taking over the abandoned set. And of course, you know, mother needs to be fed, and what better than a steady diet of television?
These prints are by the Berkeley artist Linda Benjes. Linda has a wonderful home studio where she does lithography. The studio is surrounded by a lush garden that oftentimes inspires her creative process and choice of subject matter. She says, "I do love the whole process of lithography. I start drawing on the stone when it is wet with just ideas, sometimes with a clear idea, but half the time with just a vague idea of what I want. I continue to draw, erase, and scrape when it is dry, and then either pull some proofs or grind it off and start over. The actual printing is only fun at the beginning. I rarely print more than 5 images." This litho on the left is called Wired Crow. The one on the right is called Conversation. These next 2 pieces by Linda Benjes are entitled Crane Flies and Dead Bug. These are the next 3 lithographs by Linda Benjes. The one at the top is titled Pink Feet. The one below it is called Goofy Crow. And to the right is Stellar's Peanut. The following are a number of miniature oil paintings and small ceramic pieces by Linda that are also in the show.
I'm Susan Schneider, and I'm an artist. I made this suite of 4 drawings, which I call River City Totem, about the wild creatures I've encountered in my city of Vallejo, California. These portraits are black and white charcoal drawings on paper, and even though I've been a digital media artist and have been doing large-scale paintings for commissions for more than a decade, I still draw with charcoal on paper because it's really immediate, it's fast, and it's a basic tactile material that I can manipulate with my bare hands. For over 17 years, I worked at the California Academy of Sciences as an art director for the natural history magazine that they published called California Wild Magazine. I learned during that experience that my readers would be able to connect immediately with animals if I could offer them eye-to-eye contact, even with the most exotic species. I did this osprey after joining a group to protect the Vallejo waterfront from industrial development. There was a nesting pair on top of an abandoned flour mill, and I was really attracted by their fierceness and their sense of loyalty to place. One night I saw a family of raccoons come out of the storm drains and climb up a tree next to my house, and the mother was showing the little ones how to navigate around the storm drains to get around the city undetected. It was amazing. So that included one of those. This guy here is a possum that was on our porch one night really late eating the cat food. A lot of people don't like possums because of the way they look, but they're very gentle marsupials. They're quite beneficial to us. They eat a lot of ticks, so they're great in my book. The fish, the coho salmon, I wanted to include because they swim right through the middle of Vallejo. Steelhead and coho are both endangered species that navigate up the Napa River to spawn at their ancestral spawning grounds. And I would really like to see them increase in numbers and not go to zero. They're both endangered species, and in order to keep them viable, that means we have to protect our riverfront. I use the highest resolution photos I can to do drawings, and I really like to zoom in on scale, partly because my eyesight isn't so great, and partly because I really like playing with scale, especially with the fish. I can imagine being a mosquito and watching this fish come toward me and making me his lunch. I put the portraits vertically because they represent more than just a set of animal faces. To me, they represent the wildness and the non-human species that live with us in the city. I think every city probably has its own unique set of wild species that would be representative of that place.
Hi, my name is Mark Pandone. I live in rural Napa County for about the last 24 years, and I've been a full-time art professor at Solano Community College in Fairfield since 1990. And I just want to say it's been a real pleasure to be part of this invited art show called Wild in the City, Untamed, as part of the Visions of the Wild Festival here in Vallejo. The artworks, the 4 pieces of artworks that were accepted into this exhibition are a little different than what I normally do. I'm pretty much known for my plein air oil pastels done on site at various places. I've been an artist in residence at Yosemite National Park and have shown there, and I'm part of a National Parks book as well of artists. These artworks are kind of a series I started a few years ago called the Fugitive series. It's essentially mixed media with ephemera, as well as a base watercolor painting. And the idea of Fugitive and Fugitive series is that it's these things that are kind of disappearing, will disappear. Watercolor is a process or a medium that sort of fades over time very quickly. And that was known when I started the series, and that's actually part of the aspect of how these pieces will diminish. That the individual pieces may have images in them, but they're not about making pretty pictures. Again, when you see a picture of a thing, as in some of my older work, you understand it's El Capitan or a river or an oak. In these pieces, when you look at them, you have to actually go up to them to try to investigate them and explore them and dig through them. Some of the more pointed aspects of some of this body of work that's done kind of small and intimately on a drafting table in my studio. The top one is called Separation of Church and State. And again, it's the idea of how we work in this country and all over trying to figure out those rules and obligations and regulations, and kind of a cross-section of terrain, of watershed, or perhaps even fracking and things that are going on around the country and around the world. The bottom one is called Bay Plumbing Inc., and just kind of it's an aerial view of the Bay Area, kind of an abstract about, again, how water comes in, how water goes out, and the issues of conservation.
Tim Ray is a plein air oil painter who lives in Petaluma, California. His series of paintings in this show were done in some of the abandoned parking lots at the decommissioned Naval base on Mare Island in Vallejo. He found this setting to have some of the same feeling of expansive openness he has enjoyed in other more far-flung locations he has painted at in the past, such as the mountains above Bishop, California, or the plateaus and canyons of Utah. He says, "I found standing at the easel in the middle of an empty parking lot a surprisingly isolated environment." He adds, "As a landscape painter, always it would seem there is a horizon to establish, sky above, earth below." In this series of paintings, the horizon became the roadway, a curb, or the edge of a building. No sky, no big blue source of light in the composition. All focus narrowed to the marvelous natural processes at work in the abandoned parking lots. My name is Brian Rothstein. I live in Vallejo, and I have a studio in Richmond. I learned to push paint around at the San Francisco Art Institute with Julia Satofsky, Bruce McGaw, and Sam Chakalian. These paintings are of bees that were in my backyard last summer, having their way with the sunflowers. I had a great time sneaking up on them and taking photos as they came and went and hung out on the massive bright blossoms. The bees really didn't care what I was doing, so enraptured were they with their business. The painting on top, titled Sunflower Friend, expresses my joy in watching the bees gather pollen. This is not an illustration, though I wanted it to be as accurate and clear as possible. It's a celebration of the beauty and joy I experience watching the scene. As I do in all my paintings, I try to paint each element in the image with equal and consistent energy, so the figure isn't seen as separate from the ground. I wanted to show that the bee and the flower are inseparable. The bottom painting, entitled Be Here Now, shows more graphically the bee's view of the wild interior of the flower. It was difficult as there was so much complexity in the interior, and I didn't want to get mired in so much detail. Yet I didn't want to oversimplify it, as this painting is about the complexity and intensity of nature. Looking at my photos, it seemed I was looking at a burning fire. I think I got the overall feel of it. I found I had to abandon using my brushes and only use palette knives in order to express the energy and intensity I found in the scene.